This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. I'd like to call the Invest in Willmar board meeting to order for Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. We'll do a roll call. Sawatsky.
Present.
Ammon. I see Conald, I think. I'm going to call him as present. See him. Anderson.
Here.
I'm here, Matt.
I did get a note that Bob Poe was going to be absent, and then Council Member Butterfield, Council Member Nelson,
I am here.
and Calvin.
Here.
So it looks like we've got a quorum here. I believe I've got 5. Double check.
Where's Tony?
I haven't heard from Tony. I do have 5 on here, it looks like, though.
I'll
5
text
of the.
Tony. I'll see if he's.
He was on a couple, I thought before, but
Okay. Any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? If I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. If I could get a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th, 2021.
make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion from Conald, second from Anderson to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor by signal by saying aye.
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 I
Opposed? That motion carries to approve the minutes from February 10th, 2021. We'll go to the agenda. Item number 1 up on the agenda, we've got Robbins
Matt, hang on.
Island. I'd like to welcome.
Hang on, Matt. Rob, will you send the invite to Tony again? He's got the wrong invite. Oh, there he is. I think. Okay.
Okay. Agenda item number 3, we've got Robbins Island presentation. Rachel, I will let you, I'll hand it off to you. Thank you for joining us, and go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, the Robbins Island Committee has been working hard the last 2 years since the local option sales tax passed to complete the final details of the master planning for Robbins Island. We kind of said it now that we've had 2 phases for this project because of the pandemic, and we just want to be diligent with our funds that were coming in through the local option sales tax. So phase 1 has been almost completed. The rest of that, which is just, laying more of that asphalt down, putting the lines in, they never got to do any grass or anything. That'll all be done here come spring, which it kind of feels like today with the rain we got. So that'll be finishing up in this phase 2 with the remaining funds is what we're going to be presenting you today that we hope will be completed this May and June. Jared has a presentation for you, a PowerPoint. If you have any questions, if you can, just jot them down and until Jared is completed. But this will include the rest of what we've been promoting through Robbins Island, which is the shelters, some lighting, and some tree work and shrubbery for the island. So without further ado, Jared from Bolton and Mink will start our presentation.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me all right and see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So thanks for the introduction, Rachel. Yeah, so as Rachel mentioned, this is phase 2, if you will, of the Robbins Island shelter and lighting improvements. Today, with the presentation, we'll be going over some of the concepts, drawings that were put together. We'll review some of the floor plans of the shelters, and then take a look at some of the proposed materials that the committee has discussed to be incorporated into those shelters, review the schedule, and then finally I'll have an opportunity for answering any questions that the board might have. All right, so overall view of the island and some of the proposed improvements that are being discussed. I think I'll kind of start down on the bottom and work my way to the top, but ultimately, one thing I did want to point out is the green circles shown on the plan are actually proposed trees. As part of the discussions at the committee level, Public Works actually orders trees every spring, and we talked about how it would probably be more cost effective for Public Works to install those trees rather than hiring a contractor to do that if Public Works has a tree order going on anyway. So those trees are shown there for reference, but are intended to be installed by Public Works. The orange, or sorry, the yellow circle, yeah.
I'm sorry, all I see, and I'm not sure if the committee on this, in case my computer froze, is just the intro page. Can anyone else see the next page?
Well,
That's the intro page. I can't see the site plan page. Does everyone else see the site plan?
No.
No one else is seeing the next slide.
all right. Bear with me a minute. It worked flawlessly at the open house.
Jared, I have it on my computer as well. If Janelle wants to make me the presenter, I can probably show it on my screen if it's not working on yours.
Yeah, if you want to start pulling that out, I'm not sure what's happening here. It worked just fine before I had it all ready.
Wonderful. We can see the site plan now. Can you put it in full view there, Rob? Without seeing the tabs and everything?
That's probably the best I'm going to be able to. That's probably the best I'm going to be able to do right now.
Okay.
Jared, just tell me when you want me to move.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, I apologize for that. I don't know what happened there, but at any rate, I'll start over with the site plan, and now I don't have the cursor to show you either. But ultimately, starting at the bottom, there are the green circles are the trees that I was alluding to. Those will be installed by Public Works. The orange dots on the map there's one at each parking lot there, and it goes along the access road. Those are proposed street lights, and those are the typical type of street lights that you see. They're not decorative or ornate. They're similar to the shoebox style that's currently proposed. So we've identified them at the west and east parking lots, as well as along the access roadway. The smaller yellow circles that you'll notice at the turnaround moving toward the access to Hedin Park, those are actually bollard lights that were discussed by the committee. Since this drawing was put together, the committee actually discussed the potential for extending those lights around the entire walking loop there up to that parking lot where Rob's cursor currently is. And so that is one of the alternates, if you will, that we intend to include in the construction documents and in the bidding process. The other shelters for reference, shelter number 1, Rob, if you could point that out. I believe most people know that, but just in case, shelter number 1, one of the things you'll note about shelter number 1 is currently it's oriented north and south. On this drawing, it's actually shown oriented more in a northwesterly direction. And that was discussed by the committee, and since the existing shelter is going to be replaced, they talked about potentially improving the view of the picnic area, which is off the northwest side of that shelter, to be directed more towards the lake instead of straight ahead to the grass, what is now grass, and the parking lots further to the north. Moving to the north and west, the second one is Gurry Shelter. And then as you move up to the top of the hill, appropriately named Hilltop Shelter is the next one. And then open shelter number 2 is the final shelter. That's basically a summary of the 4 shelters that we're talking about improvements, along with the lighting improvements associated with the project. If you go to the next slide, Rob. Next slide is shelter number 1. The yellow area is basically the area beneath a roof. So it's actually a building structure. You'll notice that there are 2 service counters identified. The larger one there on the left, and then an additional one on the upper right. So those are intended to have roll-up doors so that people can utilize them from both sides. Essentially, the larger one being on the left, that would provide an opportunity for setting food out, using it however people want to when they rent the shelter. There's a single access door in the northwest corner, and then a single access door in the northeast corner. Or sorry, that's not actually northeast and upper right and upper left corners. And then the garage door has also been identified on that side of the building. And that was the intent of that is it's more easy. We can Public Works and whoever's using that can more easily access that with larger items such as picnic tables, etc. Should they be stored in there or need to be placed in there for some reason. The overall shelter dimensions are 20 feet in width by 40 feet in length. You'll notice the concrete out in front. The squares that are shown kind of between the set of the first row of picnic tables and the second row, those are actually columns for the overhang. So those 4 picnic tables to the right of Rob's cursor will actually be underneath a roof. As the committee was reviewing the project, they also determined that it was important to have a outdoor area where people could sit, which is not underneath a roof. So that's been incorporated into this concept as well. Next slide, Rob. Shelter number 2 is an open style shelter. You'll see a rendering of it there in the bottom left-hand corner. That shelter, it is a prefab shelter, so it's you can buy it as a unit, so it won't necessarily be constructed out in the field. It'll be assembled rather than constructed. So this shelter also is a 20 by 40 structure. The couple of components that I wanted to point out, there is a 12-foot countertop identified at the very middle. Yep, and that countertop, for frame of reference for you guys that have been out there, that countertop will be on the east side of the shelter. So immediately behind it would be the existing retaining wall that's out there. At the posts or the corners, those are actually the committee discussed, although there will be picnic tables on the inside, the committee discussed creating a seating area around those posts as well. So those are actually benches, and we'll see that in a rendering here coming up. But simply more seating areas for people that are utilizing that shelter. Next slide, Rob. The next one is Hilltop Shelter. Pretty straightforward, large open area, about 662 square feet. You'll notice in the corner, there is an electrical room identified. Based on some discussions, that electrical room is actually, the orientation of that has changed from up and down to left and right. So if you imagine rotating that gray box up and to the left, it'll be more of a rectangle along there. That window is being removed, and then a window will be installed on the side where the electrical room exists currently. One of the things I did want to point out about the shelter is in that electrical room is that throughout this process, the committee's been very cognizant of Celebrate the Light event, and as part of that, there will be an access into that room for extension cords and things of that nature. That was one of the items that was brought up at the committee, and certainly can be accommodated as part of this project. You'll notice that there are a significant number of windows in the structure, so that a view of the lake can be provided, and then also the access into that building is provided via a double door there on that side. So one of the other discussions that did come up at the committee is that they thought that it would may be appropriate to extend that concrete pad in front of that door to accommodate a couple additional picnic tables. So that will be included as part of the Hilltop Shelter design. Next slide. Gurry Shelter. So one of the first things that I'll point out is you'll notice that the location of the door, currently the existing door is on the south side of the building. That will be relocated to the north end, so that is definitely more accessible to the playground area. And then the existing door on the west side, which is a double door currently, will be replaced with a single door. Based on the square footage, approximately 1,200, does require 2 doors in that space. So starting in the upper right-hand corner, currently there is an electrical storage area in the building that is being modified in the configuration that is shown there. So on the east side, more of the electrical area. Then as you move closer to the access door, the double door, it's a storage area. Just on the south side of that wall that creates the storage and electrical, that wall space has been identified for the painting that exists in Gurry. So definitely wanted, it's a nice open area, but we wanted to make sure that there was some wall space somewhere to accommodate that, because that was identified as a need. Moving over to the east side, you'll notice that line, there's a counter that's being proposed along that wall, and that will provide an opportunity for people to, whether it's a gathering, set food on there, and utilize that space for those types of events. And again, similar to the other two Hilltop that we just looked at, lots of windows in this building, taking advantage of the views provided by the lake on site. So next slide, Rob. All right, so this is just a rendering of some of the materials that are being considered for the project. I'll start by pointing out that those benches or seating areas that we reviewed at open shelter number 2, that open shelter number 2 is actually the only location where those types of of benches are being proposed currently. So starting with the roof, obviously it was important to the committee to match the roof of the Four Seasons shelter. So that's currently what is proposed. One of the alternates pending cost is actually to, in lieu of the metal roof, to go to a shingled roof, and that applies to all the shelters with the exception of open number 2, because as I mentioned earlier, that's a prefab shelter. So then moving down, we have the fiber lap siding, and then on the bottom, the burnished concrete block. Very similar in appearance to the Four Seasons shelter. One of the other alternates, and I'll talk about those in a little bit, but one of the other alternates is removing that burnished block, depending on the costs that come in, and simply extending that siding all the way to the ground. The structures currently contemplated for the burnished block are open shelter number 1 and Hilltop Shelter. Gurry, given its existing foundation, does not accommodate that burnished block. So what's being proposed for Gurry would just be the siding, and it would not include that burnished block. That's a summary of the materials. So again, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of the alternates that are being considered. The roof material, whether that's metal, it will be bid as metal, but there will be an opportunity to provide a deduct for shingles. The burnished block it's being bid with it on open shelter number 1 and Hilltop Shelter, but there is an opportunity for a deduct on those 2 buildings to remove that and simply have siding. And next slide, Rob. So the project schedule, the public presentation was held on March 2nd. Today, March 10th, we're at the board presenting this to you. Next week, the schedule includes going to the park board, the public works committee, and then city council ultimately on April 5th. And provided everything continues to move forward like that and council authorizes advertisement and obtaining the bids, the public bid would be April. The bidding process would occur during April. We'd receive those bids, bring them back to council for consideration of award of a contract on May 3rd, which would provide an opportunity for construction to start in May and or June. And with that, that concludes the presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Great job, Jared. Looks really, really good. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for Rachel. Question, Mary.
Great work. Love the ideas. If we were to start May, June, does that limit the amount of citizens using that environment?
So if I understand your question correctly, so yes, while the shelters are being constructed, they definitely won't be able to be rented, but because the shelters are spread out, it doesn't require the park to be shut down. The area under construction will need to be delineated somehow, whether that be fencing or some other means, but the park can be open to the public when the shelters are being built, provided it doesn't cause a safety hazard. So ultimately, the main thing is getting the final wearing course on and the punch list done out at the first phase of that project. There will be some struggles, if you will, because as Rachel mentioned earlier, the seating isn't done yet, and with days like this and mud, we'll just have to be cognizant of that. But the short answer to your question is yes, the park will be accessible during the shelter construction.
Thank you, Jared. Any other questions? Anybody have anything they'd like to, we want to move this forward? Does anybody have any action items here? I mean, I'm assuming you guys, Rachel's at your request to move it forward, I'm assuming, correct?
That is correct. We need a motion and someone to second in order to keep moving this forward so we can get it to the timeline of April 5th to the city council and also match to get it to the park board and public works. So I think we've had a good amount of input to get where we're at, since we have people like Joy Baker with Rockin' Robins on our committee and James Miller with Rockin' Robins, and just working with other city staff who just know the use of the park. So I think we've done a good job with trying to think of all uses and how it is being laid out. So if you have any other questions, feel free to let Rob, Jared, or I know. But yes, we do need a motion to keep moving this forward.
Mary Swatsky moves that we continue with this project to the next stage, or so move.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion from Mary to move this project to the next step, and I have a second, I think, from Tony, I think. So a motion from Mary, a second from Tony. Any discussion? Okay, I guess if all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries then. Congratulations. Thanks a lot. Great job, Jared. Thanks for all your hard work, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rachel, I
everybody.
just want to say, and to the rest of the city, I've been spending a lot of time walking out at Robbins Island 2 to 3 or 4 times a week. And it has just been so much fun meeting strangers from other communities that have come out here to have a different atmosphere, and they can't wait to see and didn't know about Rockin' Robins, didn't know about the lights, of course, because they're from the different parts of the state. And it's going to be really fun to see it shape up.
Thank you. Thank you. I just walked the loop yesterday.
Sounds good. Thanks again, you guys. Let's move on to item number 4 on the agenda, and we'll get into the updates from the subcommittees. Recreation fields. John or Tony?
Yep. We're gonna probably need Rob to chime in a little bit, but so last update, we were approved by the Park and Rec board to go to Public Works for our meetings, and you all know that they wanted some more information on stormwater and the land acquisition from the school. I can't speak to any details. Brian and Rob will probably give us a little bit more information on that, but it sounds like it's going positively, and we should be going back to Public Works tomorrow. So Rob or Brian, do you want to add to the land agreement with the school?
I can add to that. The conversations between the city attorney and the school attorney, superintendent, city administrator, Mark Calvin was there as well. We're talking about the land exchange agreement, and I think we're really close. There's just some minor things that the city attorney and the school attorney are working out. I haven't heard from Dr. Holm yet today. He was going to give me a call, probably get that first thing in the morning. The way that I take it, that they're going to be satisfied with the agreement and to be able to move it forward at their next school board meeting. As far as the stormwater goes, that has been resolved. That stormwater area will be on city property, so we won't have to worry about any other land exchange or talking to the county or the state about adding it on to Lake Marley. We're going to keep it on the city property. And again, what's going to be discussed at the Public Works meeting tomorrow evening.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Brian?
Yeah, Matt and committee members, the issue really has never been the actual land agreement where they transfer the land to the city for the project. That has really been a non-issue because it's defined by a survey, it's X amount of land, and they were all, I guess, in agreement. The issue really has been the use agreement of how the school gets to use the fields and those related items. And as you might suspect, there's a large portion of the day is going to be used by the school district. And that's what really has been eating up the attorney time. It might be a word here and a word there, and it's basically what the school needs in order to transfer the land, but it's really focused on the use of the land, that agreement. So we actually have two agreements to deal with, to be quite honest. And so it's an interesting thing when we talk about the land. Well, that was the easy one. It's who gets to use the land at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock in the evening. That's where the discussion has been. And so I think we've got all the issues ironed out. I was just told, I'm watching my deck get hailed on right now with dime size hail. So this is an interesting day. The detail came up through this whole thing is all of a sudden, we were always talking about the recreation fields, and the latest item had to do with the softball complex, and who does all the maintenance and access and stuff. So it's sort of coming in dribbles, but I think, as Rob mentioned, we should have it hammered out. From our perspective, there's no major issues, and it's just reassuring the school district that everything is okay. And then we can move forward with it. So tomorrow night, we hopefully should have something that the school district can agree to, because we've kind of been in agreement this whole time as to how it should operate. It's just getting it down on paper.
That's good. Thanks, Brian. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, next item on the agenda for an update is the event center. I did get an email that Gretchen wasn't able to make it. I don't know if there's any update on that project from anyone.
It'll be discussed at Public Works tomorrow. The Public Works Committee has to have a little bit more detail about the operational costs. I provided that information and will be discussed tomorrow about all the projects for Invest in Willmar.
Okay, any questions on the event center? Otherwise, we'll keep moving along here. Swanson Field, Mary. Mary, if you can hear me, you got to put your mic on.
Sorry about that. So we are revisiting the plans due to budget issues. And so the committee is going to be meeting in the next couple of days. Our timeline is to have the committee move that forward, then the project go out to bids, hopefully by the end of a week from Friday. We have agreed that any potential start time for construction could be after June 13th. The project is looking as the following, that we have a base bid on Orange Clemenson Field, and that involves turf, dugouts, a rectangular stadium rather than a larger stadium, press box, concession stand, and then the drainage or field work. And the only alternate would be blue, and as an alternate, and thus what we would be eliminating from this project at this point is because we are over budget, the stadium bevels will not be there. It'll just be a straight, or what I call a straight stadium. We've eliminated the berm, all the other alternates, no softball field improvements, nor amenities, no shelters, no restrooms, no storage. And we're hoping that we will get this within budget. Brian?
Thank you, Mary. Question, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, just expanding on Mary's report. When we get to this, and this really applies to all the projects, that when you get to a certain point and your plans and specs are already designed, and you're ready, almost like ready to go to bid, that sometimes the construction manager, in this particular case, said it's really tight, and with the cost of steel and wood and all the things that are going up, we'd like to have a little bit more breathing room in the estimate of the project, so that we can do a project and not come in over budget. And the committee received that recommendation. They talked to the architect, and that's where the base bid of orange comes from with the alternative blue. And that requires the plans and specs to be modified to accomplish that goal. And one of the things that probably, we learned, as we go through this, what could have happened was the architect contact me and say the price is going up on my contract because I've got to do some extra work as requested by the committee, as recommended by the construction manager. And that wasn't done. And what we're going to do now is, since I've got the numbers, and it is a contract the city council approved, that the work had to be done in order to get under budget. So it's not like we could get away from it at this point in time. But I'll be taking to the city council a recommendation to approve. I believe it's like $9,200 in additional architect fees to split blue off of the project, so we have an alternate. And it's a cost of doing business, and we can use that information when we go through the rec fields and also the event center in the future. But sort of a learning curve, and it's been known to happen before. So I just want the Invest in Willmar committee to, I think, understand that Swanson was one of the lead projects kind of going into this thing, and we're learning as we go on some of this stuff. But their architectural fee will go up about $9,200 in order to have a project as compared to having a project that exceeds the budget. So I don't know if I can add any more, but the intent was to make the bids come in so we could do what we can underneath the budget. And I think this accomplishes that. It just comes at an additional cost to separate them. So that the city council will see that on Monday night.
Matt,
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
just a question. Are there new drawings available to look at? Or did I miss them somewhere?
For Swanson,
Yes.
Mary?
Yes and no. Rob, can you follow up on that? There's been an adjustment to the stadium, and we've seen, I don't know what it's called, but whatever idea that it has to become from the architect, but it's not a true rendering of what we will now see. So yes and no.
Yeah, I can send whatever I have to the group so they can kind of see the outline of the stadium from the construction documents.
Okay, anybody have any other questions on Swanson? Okay, we'll keep moving here. So community center, I'm assuming I don't see Julie. It's tied to the city hall. Anybody have an update on community center, city hall? Brian, go ahead.
Community center, city hall financing is scheduled to be in a discussion with prior to the city council meeting on Monday night from 5:30 to 7, and then the council meeting starts at 7 to get some direction on financing of city hall. Overall, if you want to talk about the community center, the local option sales tax receipts I don't know if Steve got them in today or we have an update. We did not have them last week, so and I wasn't told we had them yet. But the bottom line is, if the receipts are still hanging in there where they're at, if you want to do all the projects, the community center due to priority listing and receipts coming in probably would not be funded. And that's just a fact. If you don't have the money coming in, you can't do the project. And I can't sugarcoat that any other way. But there looks to be enough revenue coming in to fund the event center and the recreation fields. But after that, it becomes a little bit harder. 5 years from now, when we got more sales tax capacity, we may be able to do, some additional projects, whether it's stormwater or community center. But right now, it looks tight. Steve, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can expand. The state is running 2 to 3 days behind what they normally would. We would have normally received the reconciliation for December today, but we have not. So the only update that we have since the last report to your committee has been the estimate for January, which was 146,000. As the committee remembers, we get an estimate and then they reconcile it. That 146,000 is compared to 115,000 of January estimate of last year. So that's all the information we have. It should be coming in the next day or two, and we will forward it to the committee as soon as we get it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve, for the information and the numbers. Anything updated, anything new on the storm, Sean, for anything from the last meeting?
The only thing I could add tonight is that we did have our first meeting of the year, because we got a new council member to replace Ms. Schwantes that was on that committee. And piggybacking a little bit on what Brian said, our meeting consisted of reevaluating the priorities that we had set for the stormwater projects, the specific projects rather, and updated on the finality and some punch list items that are due for the project that we did complete. But at this point, we've kind of decided we're going to sit and wait and see what the money situation does, how these other projects pan out, and the fact that stormwater is 5th of 6th or 6th of 7 or whatever priority list from the committees, that we're going to kind of hold our cards a little bit and see how this all plays out.
Sounds good, Sean. Any other questions for Sean? Go ahead, Brian, if you want to add.
Yeah, just add this, from a numbers perspective, if everything we're collecting now supports $21 million worth of projects, that if we include a 2% inflation factor, for the following year, and then 2% for the next year and the next year, 2% is $42,000. So we have $42,000 extra left over in year 3. We have $84,000 left over, and then we have $126,000 left over in the third year. That's only $250,000, and in a stormwater project, for Sean, some can be, $1 million, so to capture enough money at some point in time to do, big stormwater projects, it's going to be a while. So the prioritization that they've made, they may have done some smaller projects to be able to do them as money becomes available. But we'll just have to play that out, because we don't know for sure what the inflation rate is, and we don't know what the growth in sales in Willmar is going to be. Those are two variables, and so we'll just have to see. Maybe it takes longer, maybe it takes less time to accumulate additional money for stormwater or community center, for all that matters.
Sounds
Matt?
good. Appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead, Audrey.
I'm just trying to remember, are there some stormwater projects in 2021 that we were planning to fund with sales tax dollars?
No, there was some planning or design for the next project in the capital, but it was predicated on whether or if there was sales tax dollars available. It was my understanding. So we can do some planning on those projects, but as far as contract and design and obviously construction, we're gonna, the recommendation would be to hold off on those for now.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the storm? Did you raise your hand? Go ahead, Tony.
Is the city's stormwater plan only using local option sales tax dollars, or is there also budgeted dollars that are in the city budget and then the local option sales tax augments it?
You know, for the most part, it's augmented, although the sales tax dollars were going to be used for the big chunks of money. There is a small stormwater budget within the general fund in the city, but a lot of that is used for ditches and ponds, clean outs, things like that, smaller projects, smaller upgrades or repairs for catch basins and pipes that fail. As Brian said, when it comes to the larger projects that have the biggest impact on a regional area, you're talking more digits than what's in the budget process. So, and quite frankly, stormwater is largely unfunded. It's a general fund, and we don't have a stormwater utility, so nobody gets charged for stormwater usage. And so that's kind of where we're stuck with that.
Thank you, Sean. Other questions? Steve, did you have anything more? Was that kind of your update along with your, when we asked you earlier, was there anything more? I'm kind of thinking that was what you had, or?
Yeah, with no notification. The only other thing that I could tell the committee is that we have received from the Department of Revenue access to online sales. And so we're analyzing that to see what kind of impact or possible addition that has. But there's a lot of data to go through on that. But having no new numbers since the last report, that's the only additional item.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you very much. Just a couple reminders. Go ahead, Tony.
Steve, do you have any update on possible extension of the local option sales tax legislation that is at the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities or the League of Minnesota Cities is hoping to get?
I don't know if Brian wants to answer that, or I have had no additional contact, and I know that Representative Baker and Senator Lang was wanting to talk to the city officials to have some discussion about that, but I don't know, Brian, maybe you can expand on where the status of that is.
Yeah, I was instructed, right now I can't remember if it was the Public Works or if the Finance, I think it was the Finance Committee, to contact both Lang and Baker and ask them if there was an opportunity to bring something to the state legislature extending the time limit, knowing full well that we're running roughly at 70% of what our expectations were. So the funding is limited by how much we could bond for, the allocation of $30 million, and the requirement that it be collected within 13 years. And so that information was passed along to both Senator Lang and Representative Baker. And I did receive a response back requesting that, we should probably have more in-depth talks, on why this is and what we should do about it. But I think there was a concern that is this too soon? And I did carry on the email conversation saying, we can't wait till year 12 to expand, because we don't have time then to, if you expand it 2 years, you only got 2 years to capture more, more money, and all these projects would end up being done in, year 14 or 15, So the idea was to get these projects, funded now so that we can use them and we'll pay for them over the next 13 years. Well, it looks like that's not going to happen. And waiting until the end of the term of the 13 years doesn't, it just delays stormwater, it delays the community center. So I think right at this point in time, we can continue our discussions. It's probably not that big of a deal not to do it in this legislative session. Wait till next legislative session and do it. It's just, we have time, but every year that goes by reduces our ability to get the projects done early instead of late. And so they're aware of it, and we'll continue the discussion. It'll be interesting to see if others that are in our same situation are actually do put something in the legislature and see how the legislature reacts to their request.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian. Anybody else have anything? Okay, just a couple quick things I've got. Basically, reminder, if you have anything, if anybody needs to call a meeting before next meeting, just send something out. I've got our next meeting scheduled, it looks like, for Wednesday, April 14th at 4 p.m. So if you want to mark your calendars, 4 p.m. next Wednesday, April 14th. Yeah, like I said, send your agenda items to, if there's something specific we need to take action on, to Janelle, Mary, myself. And appreciate the update tonight. Unless anybody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I can make that motion.
Second.
So got a motion from Audrey and a second from Mary to adjourn, and we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Rob, should I
Take
call
care.